Laura, this is a short recording on how to do your whenever you're collecting your data, how do you go about organizing it in those columns that are going to be for your variables, those rows that are going to be for each of your participants who you collect data from. So let me go ahead and share my screen and show you kind of one of the simplest things that we can use, especially since we're part of ACC. And what that's going to be is that over here, when you're logged into your ACC email, right over here in the top right, you're going to see these dots, which let you switch from which app that you want to use. So when you click to on the three dots, it's going to open up the apps. And if you go to your drive, this is already something that's built into what you have to be able to use as an ACC student. And then when you get here, you're going to be making a spreadsheet. And so right over here, there's going to be the button where you can click new. And when you click on new, several different things you can do. And it's right here, the Google Sheets. And we're just going to make a Google Sheet that's just a blank spreadsheet. And then once it pops up, you'll see that you've got what looks a lot like an Excel, and that's what this is. It's just a kind of another version of just making a spreadsheet. And once you read through the project instructions, you're going to see that you need to collect data from at least 30 individuals. So not too many, right? Not too little, not too much. Just I think this is just the right about amount of students that, I mean, even if you're just using like pen and paper to go and survey people, you can write it all down. And then whenever you're ready, kind of hop over here and go and put in all your information. That's what I think most students are going to do. If you are on the side that you want to use like a Google form, I'll leave that up to you. A Google form is also a way that you can create a survey and collect your data that way. But that's kind of another thing for you to explore. But if you are just kind of doing the classic, hey, just pen, paper, surveying people, you need four different pieces of information, which are your four variables, two that are quantitative and two that are categorical. And you want to kind of brainstorm as to like who it is that you want to be your target and what are the four different things that you want to know from them, two categorical, two quantitative. And so for some of you, after you think about it, you might think, well, I think I want to do students. And what I want to know about them is there a difference between maybe students who are first year students and students who are second year students? So then my first variable that I would put right here in my first box for the first column would be maybe their year or their classification. And so when you go talk to students, some might say, well, this is my first year of college. And some of them might say, well, this is my second year of college. And then you would go on to collecting your data from the third, the fourth, the fifth person. And then you would also need to be planning ahead and be, okay, what is it that you want to know differs between them, or what it is that might be important to know about them. And so again, I'm just these are some things that I kind of brainstorm. The study hours, like how many hours do you study a week? And from each of these individuals, you'd be collecting like that information. Well, I study 8 hours a week, and another person say, well, I might study one. And so they're just self-reporting. And then the other thing I might wonder is, well, might that correlate with how many hours that they work per week? And some of them might say, well, I work maybe 10 hours a week, or some of them might say, well, I work like 40 hours a week. And you would have these two quantitative things to see if maybe there's an association, right? Does the number of hours that they work per week maybe affect how many hours that they're able to study per week? Check to see if there's a correlation. Then a fourth variable would be your other categorical. So my first categorical is whether they're a first year college student or whether they're a second year college student. And again, this would be things that you would want to brainstorm, like what other thing might influence their academic performance. And one thing I thought was like parent support. There's college students who maybe their parent is, especially if they're like a first year college student, might still have parent there kind of helping them out, getting things set up, encouraging them to do more work or less work, or to do more work, of course, to do more work. And so I'm going to put yes. This first person might say like, yes, my parent is still kind of there helping me out. A second person might be like, no, I'm kind of more like on my own. And so this would be maybe your first two people. And then whenever you get to your third person, you'd ask them the same piece of information. This person say, well, I'm also a second year college student. And then the study hours, they might tell you, oh, I do maybe 4 hours a week and I work 15 hours a week and no, my parent doesn't support me. And so you would go on and on and on collecting until you get to that 30th student. And again, this is just one example. It's just, and again, the reason why I'm only doing just first and second is because when we get into our later chapter three, chapter four, five, six, we're primarily going to be just focusing on group one versus group two. So I would avoid trying to do a third group right here. If you do, it does make your data collection a little bit more work that you're going to have to do to kind of like separate like which two groups you're focusing on when you do averages. So I would just to kind of keep things simple, focus on just group one versus group two, and then you got your two quantitative where you think that there might be an association between them, and then something that you think might also be an impact that uh, triggers like a difference between the groups. You might expect that students who are getting more support from their parents maybe to do better in school. And then again, I'm not completely finishing this one out, but I do want to show you one that I do already have done. These are actually student examples that are already finished from my previous students. This one was doing whether students were doing a degree that was a STEM field or whether they were focusing more on liberal arts. But one thing I want to point out is whenever you do pick what's your two groups, make sure that the spelling does not change, right? If you were to accidentally right here put like lower, like accidentally spell it like that, like an STEM, and the software is going to think that that's a different group than this one that has the capital S. So you want to make sure that your spelling always matches, so that way there's only two different groups. If not, you're going to get, you know, the stat key is going to bark at you and be like, hey, you're only supposed to have two groups. Um, and then over here, notice that they've got their two quantitative. They've got the grade that the students got in class and how difficult the class that they rated the class. So maybe if the class is not as difficult, they're going to score better. Maybe there's a correlation. And then here was it was still level of study, like how much that the students studied, but it wasn't a specific number. It was whether the student said, well, the amount that I study is pretty low, or the amount that I study is pretty high, or the amount that I study is like kind of in the middle. And that's the way they did it. It was based on categories. So this still works because the two main groups, it's just two groups, liberal arts versus STEM. And then whenever you do the second categorical variable, that one could have two or three different variables. And then later on, whenever you're doing your stacking, you could decide which two you specifically want to focus on and whether there's a difference or not. And then let me show you one more. I want to just real quick see if I can move my little captions here real quick. Where is my mouse? There it is. Okay, I think it's just gonna sit there. There we go. Okay, and then the other thing I've got is right. Another example. Oh, there we go. Here's my other example. So someone was also doing kind of the classic gender, female versus male. So just again, kind of one of your categories needs to be kind of like your main two groups. And then for their second variable, whether it's for their two quantitative, it was the GPA and then how many hours that they spend on social media. So they were thinking there might be a correlation that for students who are spending more time on social media, they might not have as good of a GPA. And then the second categorical variable, like again, maybe there's a difference between male and female on whether they believe that social media has a negative or positive effect on them. Again, just kind of the two different options there. But that's it. This is again, mainly I wanted just to show you kind of this first thing here, which is, whenever you're creating your data set, you're going to have four different columns. Two of these are going to be your categorical. These two, there's going to be two categorical. And the order of which you put these, you can put your two categorical here, your two quantitative here. It doesn't matter as long as you get two categorical and two quantitative. your first row is going to be just a little nickname for each of your variables. And then this second row here is going to be your first person, second person, third person, fourth person, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, all the way down till you get to 30 total individuals. And then from there, I'll stop. You probably also want to go to just give your data set like a name so that you don't forget it. You know, this would be project 1A data set. All right, but I'm gonna go leave it at that because then on my next video, what I'll do is I'll show you how do you actually use your data set and to upload it into StatKey so that you can start creating your graphs for this. All right, but I'm gonna go ahead and end it right there. If I can now find my how to, I've got my chat in the way. There we go. There's I got my little. I'm gonna stop there.